I recently had the great opportunity to attend via Zoom a lecture by longtime social activist Peter Geffen, who had a transformative experience at the age of 18. A New Yorker, in the summer of 1964, he was working on an Israeli kibbutz when he heard about the horrific news about 3 civil rights activists, James Chaney, Andrew Goodman, and Mickey Schwerner, who were abducted and murdered in Mississippi in June 1964. These young men, 2 of whom were Jewish, like Geffen, were also from New York, and one, Andrew Goodman, had been Geffen's classmate at Queens College, my alma mater. Geffen immediately headed back to the United States to begin what would become a lifelong quest for social justice and peace. Geffen served as a civil rights worker for the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and was inspired by Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel, one of the leading Jewish theologians and Jewish philosophers of the 20th century, who also worked with Dr. King to fight not simply segregation, but what should more aptly be called, he said, dehumanization. Peter Geffen's father, Rabbi Samuel Geffen, challenged his son's plan to put himself in this unsafe situation, this dangerous environment. Yet social justice and equality were values Rabbi Geffen had instilled in his son. How can an individual affect change? What can an 18-year-old kid from New York do that would positively impact the dehumanization of people of color? In this Shabbat's Parashat, Shelach Lechah, we read that Moses, at God's direction, sends scouts or spies to investigate the land they are being promised. Moses sends 12 spies, 1 from each of the tribes, and instructs them regarding their mission. It says in Numbers chapter 13, verse 18, "See what kind of country it is. Are the people who dwell in it strong or weak, few or many? Is the country in which they dwell good or bad? Are the towns they live in open or fortified? Is the soil rich or poor? Is it wooded or not?" And what would the scouts find? Charged with finding good or evil, weak or strong, fertile or infertile land, the scouts could only feel the intimidation. In chapter 13, verse 33, it says, "And we were like grasshoppers in our eyes, so too we must have been in their eyes." Feeling their inferiority, they also felt powerless. And reporting this only served to erode the nation's fragile trust in God. They acted out of fear. They lacked vision, faith, and hope. Only 2 of the 12 spies had a more positive, productive perspective. Caleb and Joshua shared that while there are challenges, they are not insurmountable. Chapter 14, verse 8 says, "Im chafetz banu Adonai v'hevi otanu el ha'aretz hazot unitana lanu eretz asher hi zavat chalav u'dvash." If the Lord is pleased with us, he will bring us into that land, a land that flows with milk and honey, and give it to us. And verse 9 continues, "Only you must not rebel against the Lord. Have no fear then of the people, of the country, for they are our prey. Their protection has departed from them, but the Lord is with us. Have no fear of them." I was struck by the recent image of a woman of color, Samantha Francine, who was at a peaceful Black Lives Matter protest in Whitefish, Montana. a large white man got right in her face, screaming obscenities at the top of his lungs. As he screamed at her, Samantha removed her sunglasses from her eyes and put them on top of her head so he would be forced to look her right in the eye. Seconds later, he wandered away to yell at someone else before being arrested for disorderly conduct. In her reply to the love-filled responses to the photo going viral, Samantha wrote, "My perception of myself and how others see me are vastly different." She was inspired by her father, who taught her, no matter the threat, always look them in the eye so that they have to acknowledge that you're human. She went on to say, "When I lifted up my glasses, he saw me. I saw him. He was acting out of fear. I know that. I hope this moment will soften him. I hope he will be changed. But even if he isn't, I am." Geffen, in his lecture on his experience during the civil rights movement of the 1960s, shared that he speaks frequently on the subject. And yet he was surprised that only once was he asked, and by a fifth grader, if he were ever afraid. Creating change sometimes means facing fear. It also requires us to act. When Martin Luther King Jr. was asked if he was concerned that his nonviolent approach in the Selma to Montgomery marches of March 1965 resulted in violence even to innocent bystanders, he said, "Bystanders cannot be innocent." As we are still learning today, bystanders cannot be innocent when they are silent witnesses to acts that demand we speak up and take action. As Heschel points out, when we remain neutral, impartial, and not easily moved by the wrongs done unto other people, we condone evil. He writes, "Indifference to evil is more insidious than evil itself. It is more universal, more contagious, more dangerous." In his letter from a Birmingham jail, Reverend King writes, "Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere." This message was not just for his fellow Christian clergy, but to rabbis as well. So what is our responsibility as Jews? Dr. King's friend, who he called his rabbi, Abraham Joshua Heschel, said, "You must teach children a Judaism that can change the world." Heschel also noted that the Torah does not tell us that our ancestors wrote books or innovated ideas. Rather, from the Torah, we learn of their adventures, their deeds, and their actions that became Torah. Hence, we learn the purpose of Jewish existence. We are obligated to live lives that will become Torah, lives that are Torah. In his book, Israel, An Echo of Eternity, Heschel gives us these poignant thoughts. What lends meaning to history? The promise of the future. If there is no promise, there is no meaningful history. Significance is contingent on our vision and anticipation, on living the future in the present tense. This is one of the gifts of the Bible to the world. A promise, a vision, a hope. Caleb and Joshua had it. MLK had it. Samantha Francine has it. Peter Geffen has it. Do you? And are you teaching it to your children and your grandchildren? Shabbat Shalom.